everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff.
And Jeff, what are we talking about tonight?
Tonight's topic, and as you can see, I have dressed for the occasion. We are talking about dress etiquette. I have gone to the lengths of wearing what I consider semi-formal wear. We will get into the definitions as we go along.
And what would you say that I am wearing? A blue and black checked coat with a gold on gold tie, a little lapel pin, V for vaccinated. And
I can't see any pattern, but I would consider what you're wearing business wear.
That's precisely what I consider it. And so often when I'm lecturing,
you're wearing a suit.
It's not a suit. It's not a suit because the pants don't.
And I would consider that business casual, but I'm a little stickier about that.
Yeah, in the old definition, business casual.
Yes.
The newer definition, we'll be getting into the definitions and how they've changed. The newer definition of business wear.
The newer definitions split business wear into business and boardroom.
Yes. And so this is if I was going to an interview, if I was meeting with the C-level, if I was doing something like that, I'd be wearing a suit. I'll wear something like this for lecturing in the classroom because I'm trying to model certain kinds of professional behavior for students.
You might do an informal client meeting. And
yes, and the rule though, and this will make more sense when you show your diagram here. The rule in business that I was always told was you don't dress more than one level more formally than your clients. So when all of the clients, when I was in the agencies, all the clients went to business casual all the time, which was kind of polo shirts and khakis and stuff. Yeah. I could wear a jacket, but I wouldn't wear jeans because that's less formal. I could wear a jacket, but I wouldn't wear a tie. So I would be a little more, I'd wear a business shirt and a jacket, but no tie. And that would be a little more, one level more formal. So
you also have a certain, we'll talk about this too, a certain amount of leeway as a creative.
Yep. Yes.
You know, a wilder tie or a more brightly colored shirt or something like that.
What I told students when I taught portfolio classes and helped students get ready for creative students, get ready to go into the business world, say you can have, in this situation, until you find your job, you can have one thing that is unique. The rest of what you wear should be fairly conventional business wear. But, and I remember one young woman had bright magenta hair. I said, that is your thing. My hair, that was my thing. And I have a long story about that, which is for another time. But you can have one thing because you want to be creative, but so you don't want to dress, if you're a creative in a creative profession, you don't want to dress like an accountant. Right.
You also don't want to look like Weird Al Yankovic.
Right.
You know,
in a business standard kind of situation, where you want to be creative, but you want to be creative enough in your appearance that people don't think you're boring, and you want to be conventional enough that people think you're trustworthy.
Exactly.
So it's a line. It's very interesting to.
And as you build renown, as you build reputation in your business, you can push that envelope a little more.
Yes. Give me the guy with the hair.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So
now, before we go any further, we have an important question that we have to answer with every one of these sessions. What are you drinking?
Oh, tonight I have a rosé, appropriate for the somewhat warmer weather. Nice, refreshing rosé. This is Sicilian rosé. I tend to prefer Sicilian, Italian, those sorts of rosés. They're deeper in color. They're a little more robust in flavor. I do like some of the French rosés. They tend to be very pale, very subtle.
Delicate.
Some very delicate. Some of them are are subtle unto near invisibility, but work well if the food is appropriately matched to it. Some of those would be completely overwhelmed by some of the Italian food. Some of those, but some of the Italian rosés would completely overwhelm some of the delicate French dishes. So there you go.
Okay.
What are you drinking?
I have just a very simple Templeton rye on the rocks. It's actually probably getting a little watered since our preparation ran a little longer,
Well,
but it's good.
good.
So cheers.
Cheers.
So the reason we are talking about this dress etiquette in relation to the virtues is that dressing appropriately, right? Propriety is one of our virtues, as is courtesy and respect. So you dress appropriately for the venue or the activity or the thing you are doing. When there is a dress code, you want to honor that code as a sign of respect to your host, the person that invited you, the organization that is hosting the thing, whatever. That is a sign of respect, which is also a courtesy to the host. They have asked people to dress to a certain standard, and you are respecting that request.
Yep, it's a way of showing respect for the situation, the venue, the people. And it used to be typical that people would dress for the theater. I mean, that, I don't mean the movie theater, but people used to dress for that too. I mean, going to the theater. It has, trying to attract a younger audience, theaters have become less formal because the only audiences they were attracting were
dying.
Yeah. As we used to say in the some of the auto marketing, the 70 to dead demographic.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of, the black humor there. But so yeah, so they've gotten, but I still enjoy dressing up to go to the theater and dressing up to go out to dinner. I know I've seen old photos of people dressing up to fly on an airplane.
Yes.
That is, given the cramped seating and the
oh yeah, well, air travel has changed.
It has changed. So
a lot like theater seating for that matter.
Yeah.
So
courtesy, it's also though a tool. How you dress is also a useful tool. We've talked about in previous episodes, we talked about the tools that we carry every day, things we carry every day. Your watch, your wallet, your phone, your things that facilitate you functioning and moving throughout your day. We've also, and clothes function in that way too. We've also talked about, we did an episode on Heinlein's list of skills.
Yes.
And understanding the situational awareness is significant. And in a given situation, it helps if you can understand what's going on and dress appropriately. That gives you, it may not give you an advantage, but it eliminates a disadvantage that you may have.
Well, I think it can give an advantage, but more than that, for me, like I said, it's about respect and courtesy And I have no respect for the person who simply refuses to abide by whatever dress code is asked of them for a particular thing. I mean, it's one thing if, if you can't afford to go out and rent or buy a tuxedo for a given thing, okay, that's something. You do the best you can. But the people who take the stand of, no way, I'm not going to dress up in that monkey suit. It's too uncomfortable. It itches. It's whatever. To me, that's no, you're simply not trying. You're not willing to go out of your way to do something that someone asks of you.
Yeah, and I've heard, I know guys who've said that, and it's always guys generally
Yeah.
who say that. And I know guys who've said that. I think in a lot, and just to be clear, how people dress has been and can be a form of classism. So you can think of My Fair Lady, Pygmalion, Eliza Doolittle, and Henry Higgins. The Ascot races scene, there was how people dress and how people talk. And so how people dress certainly can be a form of classism. And I'm very glad that my university has something they call a career closet, which is someone donated money to the university to buy business clothing. And students can, if they have an interview or a presentation, they can go in, try on clothing, check it out, no charge, use it for the interview. The only cost to them, they have to take it, get it dry cleaned, and when they return it, they bring it with a dry cleaning receipt. And I think that's really good, because that makes a big difference to be able to do that. The same way that I tell them that business standard English writing is like a form of code switching between the way you talk with your friends and your family to a standard language that is used in business. It's an entree into business.
Yes.
And the same thing with clothing. And so I think it's not only it's a courtesy, but it's also a tool. If you're saying, I belong here.
Well, this is the dress for the job you want, not the job you have mentality.
Yes, which doesn't mean dress like Batman. I've seen that joke, but yeah, exactly.
Now, I also, there's a couple of things that I want to touch on, particularly with formal wear as classism and business wear. We've talked about this story before, that I think guys, when I used to sell men's clothing, I'd have guys come in, younger gentlemen usually, who had never owned a suit before, had no idea actually how to wear one properly.
Yep.
But I also have guys who come in, they want to get a suit because they're going to their buddy's wedding and they don't own one. They don't like them. They think somehow that having to wear a suit is somehow emasculating. And I think if you ask most women,
yeah,
they like a guy in a suit.
Oh yeah. Well, and a well-made suit, a well-fitted suit.
Yes.
Because it's always, the key is always the tailoring, and the well-fitted suit improves. It can only improve.
Well, yeah, it's designed to, square your shoulders and disguise your waistline and make your legs look longer. And it does all these things. So what I told guys, especially when they're going to a business thing and they're balking at wearing the uniform and that's conforming somehow. And I pointed out that, listen, if you're a hunter, you're going out hunting for deer, what do you wear? You wear camouflage. You wear protective coloration. That's what this outfit is. This is what allows you to blend in and get away with stuff that otherwise would be noticed if you were wearing what you want to wear instead of what everybody else is wearing.
Well, and the other way that it's a courtesy is that if you are not dressing appropriately to the situation or the requests of the host, you're making the event about you,
Yes.
not about them or what it's about. And that's, you don't want to do that. If you want to be the center of attention, be more charming, have a better story,
Right.
learn how to dance, there are all sorts of things other than not dressing well.
And, I think that that's another factor, like a lot of things, people who discount the necessity for something, oftentimes I think are simply afraid of failing, and refusing to try is a way of deflecting the insecurity of not being able to pull it off.
Right. Well, and part of that, I think, is the unfortunate expectation that if somebody can't do something perfectly the first time, they shouldn't bother trying.
Yeah.
And no, oh no, for heaven's sake. No, if you if you can do it perfectly the first time, move on to something more challenging.
Well, there's also, educate yourself a little bit. It's not hard with the internet and the world's knowledge at your fingertips. It's not hard to educate yourself a little bit about how to do something well the first time, right? To practice a little bit.
Practice on your own too.
Yeah.
I know that before, when I was growing up, there was American Bandstand where you could watch kids.
You didn't watch Soul Train?
I was about to say, I preferred to watch Soul Train because the dancing was better. So I learned how to dance for dances from watching Soul Train. Once I saw that and how much cooler it was than the dorks on American Bandstand, I watched that. So
music. No, wait. Okay, now you've put a picture in my mind now.
Yeah.
I see you at your middle school or your high school, the Jewish kid dancing down the line like Soul Train.
Yeah.
This is
yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
For those of you watching who are too young to remember Soul Train or American Bandstand, I recommend that you now go and find a YouTube video of one of these.
Yeah.
And then imagine my colleague Joe dressed in spandex bell bottoms.
Well, they weren't quite spandex bell bottoms, but I did have some crushed velvet bell bottoms that were
chic.
They were
gray chic.
They were the height of fashion at that time. Yeah. So Don Cornelius. Yeah.
Cornelius. Absolutely.
But now, there's trends in fashion, and there's also style. What we're talking about here, there's room within each of these categories for certain amounts of personal expression.
Right.
And there are fads as well. Well, if you were going to a 1970s disco, you weren't wearing business formal. People would think you were a narc. You weren't wearing white tie, although that could have been cool in its own way.
But then you would just think people would just think you were a vampire.
Right. And you weren't wearing jeans or casual stuff. There was it's understanding the particular style of that situation.
Right. Now, while we're talking about trends and fads, I want to touch briefly on the history of, in particular, formal wear, where clothing was part of your showing up at a thing. Back We're going to go way back now to the very, very beginning, the first part of the 19th century. We are passing the Louis XV era, the Revolutionary War, the American Revolutionary War is over. The French Revolutionary War is over. We have now a new sort of class disruption that is happening. And unto this comes Beau Brummel. And he, in my estimation, I think a lot of people would agree that he's basically single-handedly changed what formal wear was. Before this time, the rich showed how rich they were by wearing the most expensive imported fabric, by applying the most gold lame decorations and ornament, the most expensive,
and
the most gaudiest, expensive thing. You showed your wealth as a way to show your class. Beau Brummel, while class systems were starting to be questioned around the world, Beau Brummel came up with a way and managed single-handedly to impress the court of George III, George IV. I think it was George IV. That he introduced the concept of elegance in evening wear, right? For men and women. But the idea that it's not about how ostentatious you are. It's about, actually, in many ways, it's about conforming to a look, and then how well tailored you are, how subdued you are in your clothing. And the what we call now, white tie and tails became the uniform. And it borrows from military styles of the period, with some changes. But the idea was men in particular dressed kind of alike. So it was hard to tell how wealthy one person was compared to another, as long as they were wearing similarly fashioned clothing. Women in this period had a lot more leeway, and they were still wearing the most expensive jewelry and that sort of thing. But there was still an element of that elegance, that you didn't wear, 5 ruby gigantic necklaces. You wore a single strand of pearls, or you wore a single pendant that was, maybe a 4-carat diamond or something. But it leveled the playing field to an extent that you walk into a room and you look around and there's all these men wearing nothing but black and white. And there's no gold trim on display. There's no lace dripping off your sleeve anymore. It's all very clean, very neat, tidy. That, of course, like most everything, became a classist thing too. You needed to know exactly the right way, what this season's waistcoat cut was, is how you knew, if somebody wasn't wearing this season's waistcoat, or this season's bust line, or this season's waistline, or this whatever. People learned to sort of figure that out and use that as a subtle way to show their status.
Eventually, the style percolated its way downward to what became the everyday business suit, which,
yes,
the sack suit, and then there was additional tailoring, and so it became, there was eventually a certain democratization, but there's still people that you can tell the difference between an off the rack suit and a bespoke suit.
if you know what you're looking for.
if you know what you're in, and some people don't, but
And if you bought bespoke suits, you know what to look for.
right. So it's still there. There's still ways that people can do this, make those distinctions. Um, I, but those distinctions are in I think we started approaching this really from the point of view of the courtesy of what you're doing when you are making a good effort to dress according to the situation, the
Yeah.
and the desires of the host. We're talking about now from the other end, which is class distinction and so on. But certainly Beau Brummel changed things significantly, and his effect was lasting.
But he he was eventually the aristocrats in France got tired of him and kicked him out. And no, I'm sorry, in Britain got tired of him, kicked him out. He moved to France and died a pauper, deeply in debt. So he never got to enjoy the any monetary advantage from his changing of style. But yeah, you're exactly right. There's the what he did changed how, as it trickled down and democratized in society, it changed a lot of things. But it was, in a way, became a way for the nouveau riche, the mercantile class who was climbing the sort of monetary social ladder. It allowed them to fit in a way that they could not before.
And it always surprises me and appalls me somewhat when I see people, wealthy people in powerful positions, men particularly, wearing cheap, ill-fitting suits that are poorly tailored. The same way it bothers me when somebody in that position hasn't cared to learn how to speak well, because it's a tool of their trade.
Yeah.
And if they haven't learned how to do that, they haven't really mastered some of the essential tools of communicating well. Because how you dress communicates something, just as what you say.
Sure. And there are some people who have been in powerful positions who, lacking any sort of inherent taste, it doesn't matter what you put them in, if they don't know how to fill a suit, or if their posture is terrible, it doesn't matter how expensive. You spend $5,000 on a suit and it's still going to look, you're still going to look slovenly and
right.
So whatever. Now, so let's talk for a little bit. We started to touch on the sort of history of appropriate, when did we start saying, this is what you wear in these circumstances, and what circumstances are those? There's formal wear, there's semi-formal wear, business wear. Those distinctions have changed over the years and have gotten, particularly in this country, I would say, have gotten less defined. There is a blurring of a lot of these. And in some ways, I think the fashion industry keeps trying to recategorize things.
Mm-hmm.
They just keep coming up with more divisions so that they can fill the niche, I think. I have a graphic prepared.
Very good.
And okay.
Okay.
So if we look here, at the very top line, this is how things probably were, I would say, from the 20s, maybe the turn of the century, the First World War, perhaps. There was formal wear, which is what we would now call white tie and tails. Semi-formal, which is what I'm wearing now, which is a tuxedo, which is like a suit cut type jacket,
Mhm.
black bow tie. There was business wear, and I'm using modern examples for all of these just to show how they've changed a little bit. Business wear is a matched suit, jacket and pants, tie. Um, in the 20s, there wasn't really women's wear or business wear for women. There was what might be considered appropriate for a secretary or something to wear, but there was no, women's power dresses. Casual was still casual. You had clothing. This is what working people would have worn pretty much all the time. Back in a time when you didn't own closets full of essentially disposable clothing. You had like your Sunday going to meeting suit, your everyday work suit. Maybe if you were a workman, if you were a laborer, you would have 2 or 3 pairs of trousers, 2 or 3 shirts, maybe. And so you were constantly laundering your clothing. Sportswear at the time, back then, would have been for the upper classes, where you would have special clothing that you just wore for athletic pursuits like tennis or golf.
The long tennis pants, whites.
Yep, the white sweater with the blue and red stripes that you see in
Yep.
old movies. That would have been sportswear, or it might even the candy striped coat and the boater hat would have been considered sportswear, something you wore while you were doing outdoor activities. You would still be expected to wear suspenders and a tie with that outfit, but that was appropriate for a casual sporting outing. And then, of course, you have specialized hunting clothing and this and that for upper classes. Now, the next line down here, we're probably moving into what I would call like the 40s, 50s, 60s, that era. You still had formal wear. There was still such a thing as a formal venue. Joe, we were talking earlier, you said like a state dinner,
Right.
for instance.
Yep. Those are among the most formal state dinners, the white tie,
right. The state dinner, a ambassadorial cocktail party, or a
yep. The standard of the white tie, white vest, tailcoat has the vest is generally short. The coat is short in the front, because the pants at the time, if anybody's watched an older movie, you'll see the waist on men's pants was not where it's worn now, which is just above the hips. It was worn just below the ribs. And so neckties, the necktie ended at the belt line. When the rise in trousers decreased, that's why you'll see some older gentlemen still tying their ties, and they still end at the old waistline, the pants
just above the navel.
Right. Well, just below the bottom rib. So
on this second line here, we see formal wear again at the left, and it's still white tie and tails for the gentlemen, a long evening gown for the ladies. The purpose of the formal wear being cut the way it is that with the very high waist, as you mentioned, and the short vest and the cropped tailcoat, is that it gives you a longer, slimmer leg, because you're sort of artificially elevating the waist, and the broad white front and the wide lapels have an optical illusion that gives you broader shoulders. So it's a very good, attractive look on a man in general. Even if your figure isn't, what would be considered athletic or sporting, it can help you look more uniform, really, is what it was designed for.
Well, more
Now,
idealized in a way.
Yeah.
Again, if it fits well, and I know I've seen. Well, I'll use the example of young men going out, they're wearing their first formal, semi-formal clothing generally for prom or something, and I'll see them and they look so uncomfortable because they're not wearing the clothing's wearing them.
Right.
So
Yeah, well, they don't know exactly how to wear the trousers. Most of them don't know what a cummerbund is. They didn't think to adjust their vest. There's a whole litany of things that I've gone to weddings and just walked up and down the line of groomsmen and fixed all of their little problems. Just like, look, no, no, not like that, like this. Here, put your tie on this way. There was a question arisen recently about somebody put a picture of somebody from an 80s or 90s movie wearing a tie. And you couldn't really tell what kind of collar shirt they were wearing, but I was compelled to chime in and say, if that is a wingtip collar shirt, you wear the tie under the wingtips.
yes, yeah.
Whereas I'm wearing a falling collar, you wear the tie on top of the collar. Otherwise, it looks ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but now we move from formal.
We haven't really gotten into like width of tie and matching width of lapel and how those go.
Yeah, there's some very esoteric details that make things look right and make things look wrong.
Flash pockets, patch pockets, peak lapel, notch lapel. Those are details we don't need to get into.
So. Right. And they're details, but there are ways to distinguish you. I mean, there is some leeway. I mean, double-breasted with a peak lapel, single-breasted with a notch lapel like I'm wearing, or a shawl collar, those are all acceptable in semi-formal.
So describe semi-formal in the situation in that era of time. Your second line is, I think you said the 40s, 50s.
40s, 50s, 60s. Semi-formal is a what we call now a tux, which is a suit cut jacket, like you would wear with any other suit. But it usually has a satin lapel. You wear it with a formal shirt. I don't know if this is coming across, but like a pleated shirt is most appropriate with a tuxedo. It is not appropriate with white tie, which is kind of an odd thing. Not a lot of guys get. That is, for full formal, you are supposed to wear a piqué front shirt instead of a pleated shirt. And now you will see when we get into creative formal, and that'll be down in the second line, we're wearing something other than black to relieve that color for a more festive, a colored vest and a matching tie kind of thing. But for real semi-formal, it is black and white.
Mm-hmm.
This is where black tie comes from, and that is different and separate from white tie. From there, we have business formal, or what is commonly referred to as boardroom. And that is a matched suit, a pinstripe or chalk stripe suit. And this is really, really esoteric detail now. And a vest. Generally, you are still wearing a white shirt and a plain white pocket.
Yeah. A friend of mine was an accountant in working in one of the big three accounting firms. And he explained to me the dress code. There was a dress code in that company appropriate to your level.
Yep.
So you couldn't wear a vest until you got to a certain level. You couldn't wear a pinstripe until you got to a certain level. You couldn't wear it. So it was really regimented in that kind of organization.
But in a way, it doesn't make sense to us now, but then it made more sense in a way that, just like military uniforms, the level of respect you're supposed to show by how they're dressed.
We know the level of capability of the person by how they're dressed. too.
Maybe. Unless you're the owner's nephew, you still have to show them the right amount of respect, whether they're competent or not.
Right. But I'm saying as a client, as a colleague, you would know if somebody is able to dress a certain way, they occupy a certain position, you show them respect, but assuming they have
Right.
earned that level, then they have a certain competency level as well.
Well, and you also know if they're capable of making decisions or not.
Right.
But so that is a level above what would be general business wear, which is still a suit, but you might wear a blue Oxford button-down shirt or something like that, a subtle patterned shirt with a tie. That's straight up business wear. Business casual, now we get into the sport coat, khaki slacks, maybe a blazer. In this era, you probably would still have worn a tie, but not necessarily. We also, in this graphic, you see that the business casual includes like a sweater and khakis. Now from there, we go to, now we have particular costume for entertaining with business associates, which would have been a cocktail party, right? Separate, different from, say, a neighborhood barbecue, which would be casual.
Mm-hmm.
But for your work colleagues and your bosses and whatever, you would have cocktail wear, which would be very much like your business wear for the gentleman, maybe a little shorter, a little more festive, flirtier for the ladies. And you might be excused of wearing a more sort of louder tie at a cocktail party than you would for business. Casual is what we understand casual now, jeans, khakis. Casual might have included slacks back in the 50s and 60s. You didn't wear, jeans weren't something that everybody wore everywhere in the 60s.
Jeans really the transition to jeans being a standard wear for lots of people, lots of the time,
right,
started in the 60s.
Right.
In the 50s, those were still, dungarees for workmen and delinquents. So
right. And then of course there's sportswear, and that's like golf clothing or tennis clothing that's specifically designed for that activity. Mm-hmm. But you can see how things are becoming more sort of finely parsed as classes mingle, and it's still useful to set a standard when these different disparate groups mix, so that everybody feels more comfortable. And this is kind of what etiquette is about. We talked about this when we talk about propriety, that etiquette is really a way to make people feel more comfortable, to give them a guideline for how to act and how to talk to people and so on. It became, as we keep saying, it became a classist sort of thing. And if you were not, rigorously schooled in the etiquette, the proper etiquette, you could be outcast. But in general, etiquette is a way to make sure that no one feels uncomfortable in a given situation. Mm-hmm. So now at the bottom here, I've got kind of where we are now, except when you get down to this right side, we have sort of descended into barbarism, and it's the Wild West, and pretty much whatever you can get away with is okay.
And at the far right, I'd add pandemic and Zoom meeting wear.
Which is, you normally wouldn't go out of your house in, but it seems to be okay to wear for a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
We still have white tie, but this is a rarefied circumstance now that anybody wears white tie for anything. It is back to what we were talking about before, the very highest state, leaders of countries meet and they wear white tie.
Being knighted by the queen.
Yes. Opening night at the Met, you might see people wearing white tie, but more often, most of them would be wearing black tie.
Right.
From here, we go to the sort of black tie optional party club wear is like red carpet wear. From, think in those terms, where you're dressed up, you are dressed to the nines, but you are showing it off. You are breaking the mold. You are trying to make some kind of personal statement, increase your brand, whatever. So you are intentionally bending the rules to set yourself apart. That is not usually the purpose of formal wear. So black tie optional, party club wear, now you are trying to look sharp and dressy, but not constricted. You're not wearing usually a suit. You might wear a casual type, linen suit if we're talking about the 80s now. An open jacket, an open shirt.
Pastel shirt and the sleeves rolled up, and
yeah, right.
And
right.
no socks in the loafers, and Don Johnson and
let me speak for just a minute about guys not wearing socks. This is a fashion thing that I think's ridiculous, absurd, and appalling. Wear some socks.
Well, and if you're in a situation where you're on vacation and you're wearing sandals, don't wear socks with sandals.
No, but I mean, if you're wearing a suit,
yeah,
wear a matched suit and a pair of wingtip shoes and no socks.
Right.
Wear proper hose. If you're wearing a suit, you should wear proper hose. Festive black tie, and these are all kind of blended together. So I drew these differences because you will see these things called out in like party invitations. But they are not, it's very difficult to draw hard and fast rules around some of these distinctions. The difference between black tie optional and festive black tie or creative black tie is blurry. And then we get into what now has become semi-formal, which would be a suit, maybe a 3-piece suit worn for like a wedding. Nowadays, if you got a wedding invitation that said semi-formal, you would be perfectly all right wearing a suit, and a respectable tie and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's similar to the business formal boardroom in the level above that.
Yeah. Or even straight business. I mean, a matched suit and a not ridiculous tie would be appropriate for semi-formal. Then there's business, still what it was, a suit.
Well, I would say though that business casual has become more relaxed, and so business, I'm wearing a sport coat and tie, and that would be considered business wear.
Yes.
But not business casual, because companies that have gone to business casual it's a polo shirt and khakis.
Yeah. Or it's like not jeans, and that's about it.
And sometimes you'll even see jeans.
Jeans with a sport coat I've seen as business casual, but usually not very faded, newer. You want newer, nice, dark indigo jeans without rips or fading or distressing, and you still want to wear clean dress leather shoes and maybe a sport coat. You can dress up to the level of business casual.
Yep.
And casual, I've included here in this graphic, jeans are in, khakis are there, leggings. That's all perfectly legit casual wear now. and sportswear. Now we get into, what I consider like beach wear, sportswear and beach wear, shorts, sandals, you know, tank t-shirts, that kind of thing. Myself, I would never consider I would never go out of the house in just a tank top unless I was going directly to the beach and not stopping anywhere. That's just me.
Okay.
But what you'll notice here, I think in particular, is that casual wear is pushing its way sort of up towards the left as we go. Part of that's a sort of egalitarian circumstance where, you're not constrained, you're not judged by what you're wearing, which is a lie. Everybody is judged by what they're wearing, whether you admit it or not. But you're not, you can't call anybody on it anymore.
Well, and I think you're right. I think that the trend has gone much more casual so when I wear to the classroom, I wear a tie and a jacket, which is in and I explained to students, this is what used to be business casual. Business wear was a suit. This would now be considered business, more than simply business casual, because that has changed, because society has moved to a little more casual. And so it's useful to explain that. I think that's a useful thing for people to understand. I think that the one thing that I tell people is, no matter how you're dressed or not dressed, you still wear your dignity and your courtesy
to whatever level you have.
Yes, but if that you're always wearing with you. And the example is a James Bond movie with Pierce Brosnan, Die Another Day, I think. He's captured, he escapes from captivity and makes his way out, and he's wearing like just rags and bare-chested and a long beard, and he strides into
the lobby of a hotel,
lobby of the top hotel, and says to the person who behind the counter is looking down his nose at him, can I help you? And he says, yes, I'll have a room, and they're about to call someone to throw it, and he is just carrying it off. And then the manager comes over, who knows him, and says, welcome back, Mr. Bond. Says, your usual suite? Oh, yes, and please have my tailor, send my tailor around. And it's great because he's wearing rags, but he is still carrying himself, and so with dignity. And
that is franchise.
That is, yes, absolutely, franchise. And the point of that is that I mentioned earlier, I've seen young men out on prom wearing a tux for the first time, and the suit is wearing them. They're not wearing the suit. They're uncomfortable. They're not owning it.
Right.
And whatever the situation, however you're dressed, own it like you meant it. And that is properly dressed in any occasion. Your dignity is always a proper set of clothing for you to wear. And so there have been, I know you do too, but I always rigorously check before some event what the dress code might be, because I want to honor the request of the person who's invited me. When I have misunderstood, I have done my very best to still go with it. And I always would prefer to be a little more formally dressed than too informally dressed. So if I go somewhere and nobody else is wearing a tie, I can very easily remove my tie. I can
Right.
very easily remove a jacket, and that would be fine. But I've also on occasion gone somewhere not wearing a tie, but I've had a tie in my pocket just in case.
Yeah, I've done that too. Not when it's unclear to me what the actual dress code is.
So one of the things you've done, I know we did too for our wedding, was make, so we had a creative formal wedding.
Mhm.
We provided guidelines for what that meant for people, and everybody did their best to do that. It was great fun.
Right. And when you open it up that way, you say, look, we want you to, the most important thing is that you come.
Yes.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's being explicit in the invitation, is that it's more important that you come than that you meet some imagined standard in this
Right.
case. But if you want to play along with everybody else, here's easy ways to do it.
Right.
And that was the goal with, in both of our cases, I think, that
Yeah.
we want to give people an opportunity to show off.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to, if you can't, come anyway.
Yes.
That's what's important.
And I think I'm frankly horrified by the bridezillas who have a picture in their mind and getting people to conform to their picture of how things should be, instead of inviting people to join in a celebration. That I think is the reverse discourtesy. Not showing up, not making the effort. You're making the effort to abide by the appropriate dress for the situation and the event, but when undue demands are made on people as guests,
Yeah.
that is a discourtesy by the host.
Well, and this is, to me, goes to, things like destination weddings.
Yeah.
Like, we'd really love you to spend $3,000 so that you can be at our wedding.
Oh, and by the way, you need to spend this much on the dress. You need to
do. Yeah. Well, and if you're a bridesmaid, here's the dress I want you to buy that you'll never wear again.
Yeah.
That I want, because I want it in my pictures, and I'm sorry that it costs $600.
Yeah.
Maybe you can take it to a resale shop and recoup $100 of it or something. But yeah,
so the courtesy goes both ways.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, there's a consideration, right? You want to honor the host, but when the host is not concerned with your comfort or your ability to attend based on all of these these hoops they put in your way, sometimes it's worth not going. Send a gift and a card, and see you after the wedding, after the honeymoon, whatever.
Yeah. So I think maybe we should talk about how to be appropriately dressed for World Naked Gardening Day, or
a broad hat, I think, is appropriate.
There you go.
And perhaps gloves if you have delicate hands.
And sandals, but no socks, probably.
Sure. I think this is the single appropriate wearing of Crocs, I think, for Naked Gardening Day.
Yeah, Crocs for gardening. Yeah.
Yeah, because they can be rinsed off with a hose, and that's useful.
Yeah, there you go.
I can't think of any other appropriate circumstance where you have to wear Crocs, but
well, high-heeled Crocs, I suppose, for the runway, but
okay. Haven't seen those yet, but I bet they're coming.
Oh, I'm sure they are. So
so that's I think we've covered what, we've given people a little lesson, and I think explained sufficiently why we think some of this information is important. So, do your best. That's really what it comes down to in any time you are pursuing virtue, is to do your best. And I don't think it serves you or anyone to abandon an effort because you feel it's an imposition on you. So a simple request like, please meet the dress code.
Mhm.
That
Given all the caveats that we've explained.
yeah, right. I mean, within your
Right,
means,
certainly,
of course.
within your means. And I think that with some understanding of a few simple things, some of which we've described here, it can be fun too.
Sure.
There can be personal expression. There can be, you can wear a lapel pin, and you can wear ties, neckties, and tie bars, and tie tacks, and other things.
There are, for gentlemen in particular, I think, and women, there are some rules of taste
Mhm.
as far as accessorizing and color matching and pattern matching and so on, but that's beyond the purview of what we're talking about
Yeah,
here.
and taste is a really difficult thing to describe. Ultimately, de gustibus non disputandum est. It's
Yes.
There's no arguing about matters of taste. But that's what people want to argue about a lot. People argue about that all the time.
But here, this is where I think, again, formal wear saves you,
Yeah.
because there is a single way to do it exactly right. A way in which you cannot be faulted. It doesn't leave a lot of room for personal expression, but if you do it this way, if you follow all these rules, you will be correct.
I think that's a comfort for some people. I
It
think
can be.
doing that then and seeing where it's only through understanding the rules that you can understand where to break the rules.
Just like any art.
Right. So, I've recently been experimenting with my own amateur mixology, trying to make some original cocktails. And it's very interesting. I read a lot, I watched videos, I understand what the rules are about the three components of a classic cocktail. How do you vary those, and trying some classic ones and varying some of the ingredients and trying it, and doing usually like quarter recipes, just so I'm not wasting a lot of ingredients and saying, that doesn't really work, and try it again. But not expecting that the first time I would do it, it would be correct.
Well, but that's the thing, like I was saying about
rules, and then vary it from there.
And if this gets back to what we were talking about earlier, that I think that people who, and I don't want to say this in a sort of a denigrating way, but the people who reject these sort of constraints, I think do it in some ways out of an insecurity that they don't know what the rules are, and that they're afraid that they're going to stumble somehow, that they're going to miss something and they're going to be embarrassed. And well, that may be so, but the fact that these rules are not hard to find.
Well, and it's saying, I don't think I can do it. I don't believe I can do it. So I'm going to not do it and say that I intend to not do it because I disagree with the whole thing. Anyway, we talked about a similar thing in terms of courtesy.
Yes.
There are simple rules for courtesy, but there are people who say that's just to disguise dishonesty. I ignore that. I'm brutally honest, which usually focuses on the brutal rather than the honest. And you have to learn the rules of being courteous and how to do that. That is not That's something people have to learn, but it can be learned. It can be taught. And so trying these things and trying them until you eventually find, hey, fake it till you make it. You can get good at some of these to some degree. And you will make yourself more confident and more comfortable in a lot of situations, and you'll make other people more comfortable.
And particularly when it comes to, dressing up, if I wanted advice on how to build a shed, I know who to ask. I know you ask a professional how to do it, and usually they'll tell you. If you need to wear a tux, or if you need to get a suit and you don't have one, go to a men's store. Same with women going to bridal stores. They're professionals. They know what works, what doesn't. They know what's conventional, and they know how far you can push it. Ask them. They'll help you. It's not difficult.
And I think you also, if you go in, say, in using, again, the example of buying a suit, if you know a little bit, then you get a higher level of information from the person you're talking to.
Sure.
If you go in knowing a little bit. If you go in knowing nothing, you say, I don't know anything, they'll say, okay, we'll start with the basics. But if you go in saying, here's what I know, here's what I am looking for, is right, using that diagram, say, I'm looking for something for this situation, these situations, I'm looking to do this, then they can say, okay, now I can help, I'll steer away from the louder jackets, though you don't see a lot of those anymore. And you'll steer you towards something more business formal, boardroom. Or, hey, I'm I really think Rodney Dangerfield and Herb Tarlick were the height of fashion. Then okay, we can help you with that. So
we probably should have spent a moment talking about the Kingsman movies.
Yes,
those were
great examples. And the Eggsy character, who doesn't really know anything, he is dressed. He is taken in and dressed, and the manners maketh the man, as they say in that, before they beat the hell out of a room full of loudmouths in a bar.
Always Oxfords, never brogues.
Yeah. Well, I think what they're talking about is a certain style that is very, very traditional. And I think back to the Avengers, and I'm not talking Captain America, I'm talking Mrs. Peel and John Steed. And Steed always was impeccably dressed with a bowler and an umbrella, but his clothes, it was that style, but updated. So
well, it was Savile Row. It wasn't.
Yes, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't Kingsman. It was a modernized version of that. The cut, the colors, the and we didn't. There's so many details. There's an American cut suit. There's a continental cut suit. Italian cut suit. There's so many details in that, but people can find their own style within this. Yeah, if you follow the specific rules, you will not be uncomfortable. You'll not make somebody else uncomfortable. You'll be showing courtesy.
You'll fit in.
You'll fit in. But then when you know more, you can make it a little more individual.
Right. Well, and it depends on how much do you care to fit in.
Right.
I mean, but that's where we push up against courtesy again.
Right.
Well, you should you should care not to embarrass
Or
people.
is it about the person or the event?
Right.
Right.
But yeah, well, and part of the reason I brought up the Kingsman thing was that Colin Firth was always, of course, impeccably dressed.
Mhm.
Eggsy in the second movie wore that god awful orange velvet dinner jacket that Colin Firth would have slapped him with his cane, with his umbrella if he'd seen him. But that was from a directorial standpoint, I think that was Eggsy breaking out into his own. You know, he was coming out from under the wing, so to speak, of Colin Firth.
Yes. I will say the second movie, I disliked the stereotype of the American branch of that.
Yeah, the cowboy thing.
All being cowboys. It's like, really? Really? Yeah.
I think it was mostly about that is a purely American thing. It was
Right.
It was done that way because it differentiated,
Right.
clearly from the English, and a purely American thing. I didn't care for it either, but
well, and I think going back to an early example, again, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., not the movie, the recent movie, which I liked very much, but the TV series, Napoleon Solo wore a center vent,
gray flannel,
essentially American cut suit. Ilya Kuryakin wore the double side vent continental cut suit.
Yeah, although he is more famously known for wearing the black turtleneck and a leather jacket.
Well, but he also wore that. I remember specifically that side vents because they became popular then.
Yeah. Well, it was European.
Yeah, that you're
more European style.
Yep. So I think
it was Russian.
Well, yes. I think we have, although Russian suits at the time were I did in the recent movie version of that, very much like when Ilya Kuryakin starts picking out the wardrobe for the young woman who's the collaborator, the partner with them, saying, no, this goes with this, so I thought that was good. Very stylish movie. I liked it very much.
It was.
So,
and in the movie with Henry Cavill, he is wearing a more European style.
Yes.
Than was the actor's name who played Napoleon Solo?
Oh, well, Henry Cavill played Napoleon Solo
in the movie, but I mean the series.
Robert Vaughn.
Robert Vaughn, yes, thank you. Yeah, so Henry Cavill was wearing a more European cut than Robert Vaughn wore. Yeah. Robert Vaughn was to me the signature thing that Robert Vaughn wore was a gray flannel shirt, gray flannel suit, and often a sport coat, like a black and white checked sport coat with black trousers, white shirt, black tie, and black shoes with a white vamp.
Oh, huh.
Very stylish. Very.
I remember that, but yeah, okay.
I in fact had a Man from U.N.C.L.E. action figure, 12-inch action figure, who had those shoes, the black with the white. That's why I remember.
There you go. Yeah.
So we've been experiencing technical difficulties. Things are a little choppy. We apologize, but we're going to wrap things up. We've taken this about as far as we can go.
And probably a little further.
Maybe. As is our wont.
Yep.
Why bother to do it if you don't overdo it, right?
Exactly. Anything worth doing well is worth doing to excess. So that's it. Give it a try. Express yourself. And so we've had some technical difficulties. So thank you for bearing with us. I know that it's been a little choppy, but we're going to just wrap it up before we have another problem. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you again soon. Until then, be thou
A good night.
and true.